Visa showdown. The tennis superstar locked up in a Melbourne hotel. His lawyers fighting to overturn a deportation order.
Warnings as Victoria overhauls COVID testing again with Australian first rules.
Restrictions set to return at midnight as new Omicron cases surge to 22,000.
COVID chaos for the AFL as dozens of stars are sidelined.
Summer storms drench Melbourne with wild weather causing havoc across the state.
And a stunning comeback century sends a message at the SCG.
The richest of returns for Osman Khawaja.
Live from Melbourne, 7 News with Rebecca Madden and Mike Amor.
Good evening. Tennis superstar Novak Djokovic is fighting to stay in Australia tonight, launching last-ditch legal action to stop his deportation ahead of the Australian Open.
The world number one is now being held in a Melbourne hotel. He's been in detention since he landed 19 hours ago. His visa cancelled, even though he'd been granted a medical exemption.
From the top of the world to the basement of a Melbourne quarantine hotel. Novak Djokovic detained by Border Force and held in immigration detention.
Rules are rules, and there are no special cases.
Djokovic arrived just after 11 o'clock last night, but after a 10-hour standoff with officials at Melbourne Airport, his visa was sensationally cancelled.
Come on, do you really think he's stupid? No, he's not.
Vocal Serbian protesters rallying around their hero, who's now caught up in a political blame game.
Someone issued Novak Djokovic a visa, and it wasn't the Victorian government.
If you have a visa and you're double vaccinated, well, you're very, very welcome to come. And I think what this says to everybody in Australia, people are welcome in Australia. But if you're not double vaccinated and you're not an Australian resident or citizen, well, you can't come.
The 20-time major champion was granted a medical exemption to play at the Australian Open, but was stopped on arrival for not having the correct documents.
Well, breaking news, Novak Djokovic's visa has been revoked by the Australian government.
As Team Djokovic waited for border officials to rule on his visa, the international incident drew the ire of Serbia's president, saying he told our Novak all of Serbia is behind him and that Serbia will fight for Novak Djokovic. Novak's father told Serbian media he had no idea what was going on and that they're holding his son captive. This is not just a fight for Novak, and if they don't let him go, we'll gather on the street.
In some way, I feel sorry for him, but at the same time, he knew the conditions since a lot of months ago.
Late today, lawyers for the world number one took his fight to the federal court as Djokovic remained locked inside the hotel, which also houses asylum seekers. Refugee protesters took advantage of the spotlight.
Free, free refugees! Free, 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 free.
7 News understands Djokovic is using the fact he's had COVID in the past 6 months as the medical reason for his exemption, but couldn't provide the appropriate paperwork to prove it.
People try to run the border all the time, by the way. People come with a visa but may not satisfy other requirements for entry.
The Victorian government says visas are a federal responsibility. The feds are blaming Tennis Australia, citing these letters sent to tournament boss Craig Tiley in November, warning him having COVID wouldn't pass as a reason to get Djokovic into Australia.
If you are vaccinated, you can play in the Australian Open and everywhere. And the world, in my opinion, have been suffering enough to not follow the rules.
Tonight, the 20-time major winner remains under guard, hoping to win a very different court battle. Jacqueline Felgate, 7 News.
Novak Djokovic's legal fight will drag on until next week. Cassie Zervos is at the detention hotel. And Cassie, the clock's ticking.
Well, Mike, Australian Open officials and Novak Djokovic's legal team are pleading with the judge to make a decision one way or another by Tuesday at the latest. That's when they need to know if he will be free to take part in the tournament. But the ultimatum didn't go down well with the judge, who reminded tennis officials the tail won't be wagging the dog here. As part of today's legal hearing, lawyers for the 9-time champion asked if Djokovic would need a tennis court while the process plays out. out. At times, the judge was clearly frustrated about Djokovic's lawyers not handing over the documents he needed to make a decision, and the judge has given his legal team until 5 p.m. tomorrow to hand over those documents. The court hearing has been adjourned until Monday morning. Until then, it is very much a waiting game.
Yeah,
Mike.
and lots of supporters there. Cassie Zervos, thank you.
The visa battle playing out in Melbourne is being watched across the world. Tennis greats are calling on Djokovic to come clean, but a furious American star lashed out in support, saying Australia now doesn't deserve a Grand Slam. Fortress Australia's strict border rules creating global headlines.
There's more breaking news we're following. The world's #1 tennis star has been denied entry.
Novak Djokovic.
His visa to enter the country was turned down.
Six-time major champion and Novak Djokovic's former coach, Boris Becker, is calling on him to come clean.
I think it would be in his best interest to openly speak about it, embrace the situation, and maybe let everybody in a little bit what he went through to get this special exemption.
American sports commentators aren't so sympathetic.
But I'm laughing because I find this sort of funny because he tried to get with a fast one and somebody just smacked him across the face and said, "Get out of here."
I don't think there's a sincere bone in his body. I think everything he says is staged to make himself look good. And Mike, I don't think he believes in the rule of law for anybody. Well, certainly not for him.
Like Djokovic, US player Tennis Sangren isn't vaccinated. He's lashed out at Australia's politicians, saying Australia doesn't deserve to host a Grand Slam. Tensions in Serbia reportedly escalating. But this latest drama has raised questions about how Australia is perceived by the rest of the world.
Certainly it's going to cause a bit of a stir between Serbia-Australian relations. It would be an embarrassment to me if Australia let him in just on the basis that he was famous.
It's not the first time an international celebrity has been caught up in border control controversy. Johnny Depp and Amber Heard brought their dogs Pistol and Boo into the country without declaring them to quarantine.
It's time that Pistol and Boo buggered off back to the United States.
If Djokovic thought this process was tough, he'll have just as much trouble ahead of the French Open. President Emmanuel Macron telling a local newspaper, the unvaccinated, I really want to them off, amid daily cases blowing out to 300,000.
New rules and restrictions are set to come into force in Victoria in just 6 hours. From midnight, density limits are back for restaurants and cafes, and there's another overhaul of our COVID testing rules. The changes came as the state recorded 22,000 new cases, and a leading expert lashed out at the handling of the crisis.
After crowded New Year celebrations, a staggering 1 in 50 Victorians now has COVID. It's even worse for the young.
Some 40+% of current cases are people in their 20s. About 1 in 20 Victorians who are in that age group currently have COVID.
Most got the virus in hospitality venues, so density caps return to restaurants, cafes and pubs. Inside, 1 person per 2 square metres, like New South Wales. So for Chin Chin, almost full today, tomorrow down to half capacity.
It's crippling an already crippled industry, and it's unfair to say the least.
The government also strongly recommends people work from home and stay off indoor dance floors.
We're asking hospitality operators to slow down. No other industry's been asked to do that.
But a reassurance, no return to this.
There's no plans to have lockdowns. I think they are a 2020, 2021 iteration.
Also from tomorrow, if you test positive on a rapid antigen test, legally it's the same as testing positive in a PCR test.
This is the biggest change to our testing system since the start of the pandemic.
So test positive on a rat and you must isolate for 7 days. Notify contacts and report the result to a government website or hotline, so authorities know how many people have COVID, and it's for your own good too.
Ensure that people can still access care if their symptoms are deteriorating, and also to access welfare and other support.
So PCR tests will only be for high-risk workers and for those who get a surprise rapid test positive.
This is really only recommended for people who have no symptoms and who are not contacts.
Today, almost 22,000 new cases in one day.
Greater than the number our PCR testing system diagnosed for the entire of 2020.
There were 6 deaths. Hospital admissions rose by 40 to 631. Those in intensive care slightly down, on ventilators slightly up. While the constant changing is frustrating and confusing for those in the hospitality industry, it's also causing major problems for pharmacies.
Just when you think this pandemic can't throw up bigger surprises, there's another curveball.
The surprise this time, National Cabinet's offer of free rapid antigen tests to concession card holders through pharmacies. It won't actually happen for weeks, but they're now being bombarded.
Please do not go or contact your local pharmacy seeking a free rapid antigen test kit with your pension card because it is not available yet.
For months, experts warned we needed to move to a greater reliance on rapid antigen tests, but still now they're in desperately short supply.
Yeah, well, the horse is bolted. This is, I think, the biggest policy failure of the pandemic so far in Australia. You know, premiers, prime ministers, commentators, researchers, chief health officers, we've all been saying for at least 6 months that we'll require a big pivot to using rapid antigen tests, but it seems somebody forgot to order them.
Nick McCallum, 7 News.
Elective surgery is now on hold for thousands of Victorians to help take pressure off our hospital system. Christy Cooper is at Footscray Hospital tonight. Christy, it's a huge blow for patients.
It is, Beck, a massive blow. Tens of thousands of Victorians will now have to wait even longer for elective surgeries after already having been postponed several times over the course of the pandemic. But authorities say there are few other options as hospitals try to manage an increasing number of COVID patients with a decreasing number of staff members. More than 65,000 Victorians on waiting lists for so-called non-urgent elective surgery on hold again.
The patients that I've cancelled for next week include people who currently can't sleep because of pain and tingling in their hands and who are having problems on a day-to-day basis.
Lynette O'Connell's again in painful limbo as she waits for life-changing knee reconstruction surgery.
It's very debilitating. It is, and plus I'm in a lot of pain. I can't even do housework now. I mean, I've got to the stage I just can't.
Elective surgery falls into 3 categories. Those in Category 1, at risk of quick deterioration or becoming an emergency, can go ahead. But those in Categories 2 and 3 have been put on hold. They include patients whose conditions cause them pain, dysfunction or disability.
There certainly is a backlog. Going into Christmas, we were still at elective surgery restrictions of 75% of usual capacity. And in some hospitals, it's been Category 1 surgery only for quite some time.
The word elective, I think, is a little bit misleading because all it means it just doesn't need to be done within 24 hours.
Well, I say it is important as far as the quality of life goes for people with a knee problem. Now it's affecting the whole leg.
With exploding case numbers, doctors expect the pressure on the health system to get a whole lot worse before it starts to get better.
We have in Victoria a bit over 600 people in hospital at the moment. I think the Alfred Hospital has about 480, 500 beds. So that's more than one whole Alfred Hospital worth of patients.
While only a small percentage of patients with Omicron are requiring hospital care, it's a small percentage of a large and rapidly growing number.
It's not a media beat up. These are the numbers. We're not making them up. These are what's just been reported. I came from a situation only a week ago where I didn't know anyone who had COVID. In the last 48 hours, I know now 10.
Christy Cooper, 7 News.
And COVID is threatening to cause chaos in the AFL for a 3rd straight year, with more than 50 players across the league testing positive. Many will still be in isolation when pre-season training resumes on Monday. The league's current policy requires all players and staff to take a rapid test on arrival to the club each day.
Well, we've had another day of wild weather across the state. Sonia Marinelli, it was the city's turn to bear the brunt of the severe storms today.
It certainly was, Beck. A cluster of storms struck the city this afternoon, dumping rain and hail in some parts. They've cleared, but there's still a rather large one going to the west of Geelong. These are tropical storms, so they are holding a lot of moisture, and they develop quite quickly, so that meant many of us copped a drenching. Bursts of intense rain pummelling the city roads as destructive storms bear down. One ripping through Altona, causing a power outage at the local Kmart.
We've got to go to the front of the store, guys.
Well, this driver failed to heed the warnings following the afternoon deluge in South Melbourne. The city today in the firing line as other parts of the state face a clean-up from the wild weather. Creswick near Ballarat hit hard by last night's severe storms. A bulldozer brought in to clear the blanket of hail. The storm was so powerful it felled trees, while heavy rain sent a torrent of water down the main street. After a dry Christmas and New Year, this is our La Niña summer returning with a vengeance. The weather pattern helped Victoria wrap up its coolest year in almost 2 decades and its wettest since 2016. The city gauge getting a workout in 2021.
In Melbourne, rainfall was about 25% above average in Melbourne.
But with the system forecast to weaken, it may not be a sign of things to come.
I would expect that La Niña would weaken as the year progresses, and we would go toward warmer and drier conditions through the year.
This is our first burst of wet weather this year, and it comes after a relatively long dry spell. That means the roads can be slippery, so if we get more rain tomorrow, motorists are being urged to drive to the conditions. But I'll be back with your full forecast after sport. Beck.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Well, Jackie Felgate is here with a look ahead to sport. Jack, it was King Khawaja at the SCG today.
Hello, Beck. Yes, it was. It was a simply stunning return to the Test Arena. After 2.5 years out, the veteran provided one of the highlights of the summer with a brilliant century. And Ash Barty is back too, getting her Australian Open preparations off to the perfect start. And I'll have details on it. And vaccinated superstar who's just made his sporting return. Mike.
OK, thanks, Jack. See you soon. A man's been killed in a tragic hit and run.
He was left for dead in Hampton Park. Up next, the police plea to help catch the runaway driver.
13 killed in one of the darkest days in Philadelphia's history.
And revealed why the drone spectacular that was supposed to light up Melbourne's New Year's Eve was scrapped.
A major manhunt is underway across Melbourne tonight to find an accused killer driver. Detectives are certain the driver would have known he'd hit a cyclist before leaving the victim for dead.
A haunting image of a family man's final ride to work.
It's shocking. That's all I can say. It's shocking.
Solay Manapuri didn't stand a chance when he was struck by a car in Hampton Park around 4:30 this morning.
I just heard a thump and a car driving off with something underneath it. I thought it was a bicycle being hit, but I didn't have the stomach to go out and see what happened.
Mr Manapuri's belongings left strewn across the road.
He makes people laugh every time. He likes helping people.
Police say the driver who killed the 59-year-old didn't stop to help, instead fleeing the scene.
There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that this driver knew that they hit a person or hit something and should have stopped.
It's shocking. And whoever did it, why run away?
Police searched the intersection of Pound and Hallam Roads for hours looking for clues. It took more than 7 hours to clear the debris and for the road to reopen. Some residents feared this morning's fatal crash was only a matter of time, concerned for their own safety along the busy stretch.
It's very dangerous. There's a lot. A car came through the window here not long ago, Easter Sunday last year. Came through the window on the side there.
Tonight, the killer driver is still on the run.
The simple message is, hand yourself in now. Attend your local police station and tell us your version of events so that we can establish exactly what's happened.
Own yourself up, do the right thing, stop running, you'll still be caught.
And in developing news late this afternoon, police released this image of a man they believe can help in their investigation. Officers say the car involved was a 2010 red Holden Cruise stolen from Doncaster yesterday morning. It was found burnt out in Glen Waverley just half an hour after this morning's fatal crash. And police are appealing for anyone who witnessed that crash or has dashcam to come forward. Beck.
OK, Hope Wilson, thank you very much. Gangland warfare has exploded in the middle of a suburban street as a key member of a notorious underworld family was shot dead in Sydney. 35-year-old Gassan Amun, brother of crime boss Bassem Hamzy, was shot in the head after leaving a laser clinic.
The shooting is quite obviously targeted, a very brutal attack. This type of behaviour has been seen before and it will come to an end very soon.
Police are vowing to stop reprisal attacks.
13 people, including 7 children, have been killed in an apartment fire in Philadelphia, described as one of the most tragic days in the city's history. As flames ripped through 3 stories, the fitted smoke alarms, which passed tests mid-last year, didn't work. 8 people managed to escape, but crews say with only 2 ground floor exits, no one else got out. Investigators believe it started in a second-floor kitchen and swept up the stairwell.
Joe Biden is set to blame Donald Trump for the Capitol Hill riots in a major address on the first anniversary of the deadly outburst. His Attorney General is now promising to prosecute key figures behind the uprising.
Washington prepares to mark 1 year from the most damaging attack on its democratic heart, Capitol Hill, in almost 2 centuries. Among planned events tomorrow, President Biden will speak, the White House telling reporters he will single out his predecessor, emphasising the singular responsibility President Trump has for the chaos and carnage that we saw. 5 dead, 140 police injured, national politicians terrorised as they tried to confirm Joe Biden's election win. The former president continues to argue election fraud robbed him of victory.
The election fraud of 2020 presidential election. Nobody's ever seen anything like it.
Those involved must be held accountable.
Today, Joe Biden's Attorney General spoke on bringing key figures behind the riot to justice.
We will follow the facts wherever they lead.
Federal authorities have charged 725 people over the events here 1 year ago. Not good enough, say critics. They argue the Department of Justice has gone after Donald Trump's foot soldiers, not the architects of the insurrection, and not Donald Trump himself. Donald Trump cancelled a news conference planned for the anniversary, but says he'll address the issues at a rally later this month. In Washington, D.C., Tim Lester, 7 News.
It's been revealed Melbourne's New Year's Eve drone show was cancelled over safety fears. Hundreds of drones were meant to fly above Docklands, but the Civil Aviation Safety Authority didn't tick off on the display. The Lord Mayor previously said the show couldn't go ahead because of shipping delays that impacted equipment, training and safety approvals. All parts have now arrived in Melbourne and there are still hopes it may go ahead in coming weeks.
Well, supermarkets are under pressure to keep the shelves stocked.
They're facing COVID chaos. Up next, how they're coping and what it means to grocery supplies.
Plus, Prince Andrew takes another hit as his accuser's ex opens up.
Russian troops move in as fuel prices drive a country to the brink of revolution.
And a rev head's dream as the Summer Nats make a welcome return. Staff shortages are having a crippling impact everywhere, from supermarket shelves to tourist strips. New density limits announced today are a blow to some hospitality venues, while others, well, they're just fighting to stay open.
Coastal towns have welcomed tourists back with open arms, but Omicron has dealt a new blow. The Lawn Main Street, another casualty, multiple restaurants and cafes unable to open.
Unfortunately, due to the extreme staff shortages within the region, Lawn Fish and Chips has been forced to close.
All of the people that need to go in isolation that are close contacts or indeed
actually have contracted COVID themselves means that a lot of these businesses have had to close.
With fewer testing sites in regional areas too, just getting a swab has been a nightmare.
I've got some friends that live in Geelong, and I know some of them have had to travel into Melbourne to actually end up getting tested.
With a high number of case numbers, well, that's going to have an obvious impact on workforce.
The rampant variant is causing issues throughout Victoria's supply chain. Coles moved first, putting limits on meat and rapid tests yesterday. Smaller supermarkets are not immune.
We're struggling at the moment to find produce. A lot of our regular suppliers and regular farms don't have the stock that we require.
The Prime Minister trying to keep transport moving.
That's one of the reasons why yesterday we agreed to remove that 7-day rolling testing requirement for truck drivers.
But the union says that's not enough. Truck drivers still need to prove they're negative in the workplace, and it's not solving the issue for other distribution workers.
It doesn't help at all by lifting it here, because what we've got is Omicron going crazy, and we've got an absence of rapid antigen tests.
I can't see things improving until the case numbers go down and the requirements to isolate go down.
Until then, customers are being told to expect more of this.
I went to Kmart and things were very low in Kmart.
Ashley Kanowski, 7 News.
Australia and Japan have signed a landmark new security treaty, beefing up defence cooperation between the two countries. Scott Morrison and the Japanese Prime Minister inked the new agreement during a virtual summit this afternoon. The pact allows Australian and Japanese forces to operate seamlessly in both countries and deploy together.
It basically enables us to work like this.
It's the latest move to strengthen Australia's military ties amid China's growing assertiveness in the region.
Russian troops will soon start moving into Kazakhstan to stamp out an escalating uprising. Explosions have rocked government buildings with the president's official residence set on fire. In response so far, protesters have been hit with water cannon, and there are reports the country's internet has been cut. The rioting was sparked by a sharp rise in fuel prices. The government has resigned in response to the unrest. The ex-boyfriend of the woman accusing Prince Andrew of sexual assault says she did meet the royal, along with his former friend, Jeffrey Epstein. It comes as one of the jurors in Ghislaine Maxwell's trial speaks out about what kept them debating for so long.
As convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell awaits sentencing, one of the jurors at her trial reveals how they debated the actions of her victims.
Some people were like, how could they keep going back? Like, why would their moms allow them to do that? And I was like, we can't judge them based on what they did or didn't do.
The socialite's conviction as the storm surrounding her friend, Prince Andrew, grows. He denies accusations of sexual assault and says he never met his accuser, Virginia Giuffre. But her ex-boyfriend claims he did.
She had told me before that she was going to go meet him with Jeffrey Epstein. And then when they were on their trip, she had called me and she was talking about, she knew what they wanted him to do or what they had wanted her to do. And that she was really nervous and scared.
Here in Britain, royal watchers describe Prince Andrew's situation as difficult. The Duke's future in limbo now more than ever, as he awaits news from New York as to whether Virginia Giuffre's civil case against him will proceed. As another royal legal drama ends, as the Duchess of Sussex successfully sued a London newspaper for publishing a private letter to her father, it's been revealed the Mail on Sunday's owners will pay Meghan just £1, about $1.90, for invasion of privacy, but much more for breach of copyright. The confidential amount thought to be in the hundreds of thousands. Her multi-million-dollar legal bill will also be covered. In London, Hugh Whitfeld, 7 News.
Canberra was even louder than usual today as summer gnats revved back after a 2-year break. Car enthusiasts lined the streets to watch the traditional cruise into town. Events including a burnout competition will run over 4 days. Anyone who develops COVID symptoms will need to notify organisers and leave the event.
Up next, a plea for help to find a missing man.
Plus a warning on junk food traps, what dietitians want families to know about summer holidays and beating unhealthy habits.
How cyclists nabbed by police are avoiding their fines.
And a tennis star's painful lesson on hitting up in hotel quarantine. Cyclists caught speeding through South Bank have avoided having to pay hefty fines. Officers nabbed 45 riders during a crackdown in 2021. But the Bicycle Network helped 16 riders avoid convictions and fines of more than $1,600. The group is pushing for speeding riders to be given on-the-spot fines rather than dragged through the courts. Melbourne detectives are appealing for help to find a missing man not seen for 2 months. 29-year-old Andrew was last spotted in Oak Tree Drive in Hampton Park on November 11. He's known to frequent the Hampton Park, Dandenong, Casey and Cardinia areas and may have travelled to Sydney.
Families heading off on summer road trips are being warned about junk food traps on the journey. Dietitians are tonight sharing their top tips to keep the kids happy and full of goodness over the holidays.
Fruit and veggies are staple snacks in the Knox household, and when they're on the road, it's no different.
It's all about preparation for us because they love to snack the whole way.
The Perth mother of two says her trick is individual containers to keep things interesting during road trips.
My kids love anything that's termed a snack pack or a snack pot. So we might slice up carrots and call them carrot chips.
Experts warn without preparation, it's easy to fall into junk food traps. Just fueling up the car can be a battle of the sugar, salt and saturated fats.
Pack lunch boxes or snack boxes for their kids. That way kids can eat when they want and what they want.
Suggested snacks include nuts and seeds, dried fruit, rice crackers or peanut butter sandwiches for something more filling, and none need refrigerating. But with a cold pack, yogurts, dips and veggies, boiled eggs and cheese will help keep the little ones fuller for longer. Hydration can also limit snacking, but for those who do want to indulge, experts encourage families to limit unhealthy options to a snack. For those who do get caught out, experts suggest searching for the healthier options. Things like trail mixes, nuts, cheese and crackers, options like fresh fruits or sandwiches, urging parents not to get caught up on the cost.
It's much cheaper and higher in fibre than lots of the other options.
Keeping it healthy on the road can then allow something special at the destination. Jacqueline Robson, 7 News.
An American tennis player has learnt the hard way about why it's important to always keep your eye on the ball. Oh! Don't you two laugh. American Sebastian Korda is in hotel quarantine in Adelaide ahead of the Australian Open. That hurts. He posted the video to social media conceding his aim needs a little work. You two can't laugh. That
we
hurts.
Don't know. We take your word for it.
Men everywhere are wincing. Jackie Felgate's back with sport and Uzi Khawaja as cricket's comeback king.
Hello, Mike. He certainly is. He started the SCG with a stunning century and a declaration. Looked to have England on the ropes before some late heartache just before stumps. Rafa Nadal details his COVID nightmare after a winning return to the court. And the unvaccinated NBA star back for Brooklyn. Welcome back. Usman Khawaja has produced the comeback story of the summer, scoring a brilliant century on day 2 of the 4th test at the SCG. England survives some nervous late overs before stumps.
Usman Khawaja survived some early heat. Steve Smith targeting Jack Leach.
Smith seizing upon the fuller length.
Runs, though, came at a trickle, like the first rain delay, but unlike ground staff. Smith comfortable going off and on, so too his partner.
Khawaja's played a beautiful shot.
Between them, Josh Butler and Joe Root dropped Khawaja on 28. Smith to 50, but not beyond 67.
Oh, yes, he's got him!
Stuart Broad snaring Smith for the 9th time. Cam Green going in similar fashion for just 5. His first test since August 2019, Khawaja produced a perfect blend of patience and punish.
That's a gift from Joe Roots, and he moves to 99.
A Pat Cummins cameo, almost upstaged Khawaja's 9th test century just before tea.
And what a special moment it is. The richest of returns for Usman Khawaja.
Wife Rachel and daughter Aisha on hand. 11 years after his debut on the same ground, pats are plenty for the popular 35-year-old, putting Australia's other batters on notice. Finally out for 137, a career-defining comeback. Chasing Australia's 8 declared for 416, England's Zach Crawley survived thanks to a Mitch Starc no ball. Andrew McKinlay, 7 News.
Well, Novak Djokovic has a battle in the courts. Rafa Nadal made the perfect return on court. The Spaniard was untroubled in his opening match of the lead-up event at Melbourne Park. He enjoyed a straight sets win in his first professional contest since August after foot and COVID battles.
And a typical way to finish it, swashbuckling forehand. And Rafa is back at Melbourne Park, a winner.
I felt so tired and I had fever. I had to be on the bed for a couple of days without having the chance to move much because I was very sick.
Last night, Ash Barty came from a set down to defeat Coco Gauff in her first match at the Adelaide International. The world number one hasn't played since last September. Fierce rivals Carlton and Collingwood are set to square off on Sunday in a blockbuster opening to the AFLW season. No one has tipped the Blues to succeed this year, but that doesn't bother coach Daniel Harford.
The Blues have a point to prove in 2022.
Got a draw. Keep looking at your target there, Brezzy.
After narrowly missing finals last season, no captain has tipped them for a grand final appearance.
Well, there's nothing like a sneak attack, so we're pretty okay with that. So I'm not too surprised that no one's tipping us. We were fairly disappointing last season, but we're hoping that what we've done in the off-season with this new squad of players is going to be a bit of a change in fortune for us.
The Magpies ruffled their feathers in round one last year.
A little bit of spice and Bree Davies on the bottom of it.
I wouldn't expect it to be any different. I think it's going to be the exact same. It has been since I first started playing AFLW against Collingwood.
A league best and fairest, Maddie Prasparkas says she's feeling better than ever.
I've hit some numbers that I haven't hit before, which is also exciting.
Geelong has an ace up its sleeve in Nina Morrison. The former number one draft pick returns after 2 ACL injuries.
I feel like mentally and physically I'm really prepared at the moment and I'm just, really raring to go.
The Golden Perm, the face of a new Cats campaign. She is football.
We belong to Geelong and belong in this football space and are ready to kind of make our mark on the competition in that sense as well.
They face North Melbourne on Saturday night. Tim Hipsley, 7 News.
Unvaccinated NBA star Kyrie Irving has finally played his first game of the season. The Brooklyn Nets guard has refused to get the jab, which restricts him to only playing outside New York State.
Ball movement. Irving, jumper at the horn. Got him! Kyrie beats the buzzer!
Irving had 22 points but wasn't able to get the win, going down to the Indiana Pacers 129 to 121. One of the more extraordinary days in not just Australian sport but in politics as well. So Novak Djokovic in that hotel until 10 a.m. on Monday, and then we'll get the decision about whether he's actually going to be deported or whether he'll play.
It's going to be a long weekend for him, isn't it?
And a lot more coverage of it, I'm sure. Jack, thank you. Sonia is tracking a second day of severe storms. Sonia, tell us about it.
Well, Mike, there's still a rather large one bubbling to the west of Geelong, but they've mostly cleared out of the city now. I'll have the details next. Hello again. What started as a muggy but pleasant morning quickly turned as these storm clouds rolled in. From the storms, bursts of intense rain, hail and strong wind gusts as clusters of severe cells scattered down over Geelong and across Melbourne. The heaviest rain fell to the west of the city. She Oaks near Geelong had 15 millimetres. There was 12 at Laverton, but just a millimetre fell in the city. Storms have cleared the city, but we can't rule out the chance of more just yet. It's a sticky 27 degrees outside right now. It's sitting on 29 out of the airport, 30 in Watsonia, 27 for those of you in Moorabbin. Thunderstorms developed across most of the state, except up in the far northwest corner. The most significant of those cells striking up between Maryborough and Melbourne, the area lying directly underneath the low-pressure trough. Storms too striking the northeast, dumping heavy rain on already sodden ground. But tonight, the area at risk of severe storms is mostly over the southwest of the state. Tropical moisture is still pouring into our low pressure trough, but tomorrow it gets moving, slowly drifting out towards the east. That means the storm risk clears the west during Friday before clearing most of the state on Saturday. To the forecast now, and we're starting with a look around the nation. Rain delays held up play in Sydney, and there's a good chance the third day of the fourth Ashes test will be interrupted as well by showers even a storm. Showers and storms too on the way in Brisbane. Here in Victoria, another day of widespread showers and pockets of thunderstorms. By the afternoon, it should clear the west. By the evening, expect showers to scatter over central and northeastern Victoria. It is another warm, humid but mostly cloudy day. Closer in, and tomorrow the risk of more storms, but this time they're more likely over the outer eastern suburbs. Otherwise, partly cloudy with showers, and it's warm and muggy with maximums very similar to today. So another very uncomfortable night's sleep here in the city. We drop down to a balmy 21 degrees before heading back to 29. Looking ahead, and the air becomes far less humid on Saturday. Still the chance of light showers, a cooler top of 21 degrees. Sunday is looking good, partly cloudy as we head to a top of 24. We rise to 27 on Monday, down to 24 on Tuesday, up to 28 on Wednesday and 30 degrees for your Thursday. So it is lovely and warm, but still there is a chance of showers as we head through the week. But for tomorrow, one more day of these tropical conditions with a chance of more heavy rain under a storm. As we know, though, those storms are hit and miss. We may get one, we may not. But it's looking good after that.
It's like Tats Lotto numbers. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Simon. And that's 7 News for this Thursday. We'll have updates throughout the night.
For now, from the 7 News team, good night.